There are moments that don't fit into language. Strange, sudden ruptures in your reality. They don't announce themselves. They slip in quietly, like a breath caught in your chest or a tear you didn't know you were holding back. Maybe you were watching the sunrise hit the stone steps of Machu Picchu, alone in the sacred silence of morning. Or maybe you were just standing in your kitchen, washing a plate when it happened. That feeling, like something was about to break open inside you, like you were seconds away from remembering something ancient, something that was never truly gone, only sleeping. And then, just as quickly, it vanished. You shook it off, told yourself it was nothing, a passing emotion, a glitch in thought. But deep down, part of you knew. That wasn't imagination. That was a whisper, something sacred brushing up against the edges of your awareness. The moment you almost remembered. We've all felt it. That unshakable sense that there's something more, something just behind the veil of the ordinary. A truth buried under layers of noise, repetition, and distraction. Something the world taught you to ignore, but your soul refuses to forget. If you've ever felt that, this is not by accident. And if you're still here, watching this, then some part of you is ready. Ready to remember what the world begged you to forget. Before we continue, take a second to subscribe to this channel. If this message speaks to you, if something inside you stirs as you hear these words, your support helps us create more videos like this to awaken more souls, just like yours. Now breathe, slow down, let's begin again. We were never meant to be blank slates. You didn't arrive in this life empty, to be filled up with someone else's truths. You came with a blueprint, a soul-level design, forged across lifetimes, encoded with memory, purpose, longing, and love. But somewhere along the way, you were told otherwise. You were told to forget. They taught you that truth lives in books, in institutions, in degrees and doctrines. They told you who you were before you could decide. Gave you a name, a nationality, a list of things to believe, and a long line of rules to follow. They mapped out your life before you even had a chance to ask the question, what if there's more? And so, like so many, you forgot. You forgot that you are not a product of random circumstances. You forgot that the ache you carry isn't emptiness, it's memory. You forgot that your intuition isn't superstition, it's a form of remembering. But the forgetting never fully took hold, did it? Because now and then, the soul speaks, not with words, but with echoes. You feel it when someone you just met feels like someone you've known forever. You feel it in dreams that taste like reality, and mornings that leave behind the residue of another world. You feel it in moments of sudden clarity, when the noise drops away and something ancient stirs inside you and says, "This matters. Pay attention. These are not coincidences. They are breadcrumbs, glimpses into the blueprint you carried into this life. The blueprint that holds your soul's history, its longings, its pain, and its wisdom. It's the quiet code beneath the noise. And every time you ignore it, you get pulled back into the forgetting. But every time you listen, you remember. You remember that your life didn't begin the day you were born. You remember that the challenges you face aren't punishments, they're patterns calling to be broken. You remember that you've been here before and not just once. Because your soul is eternal, and it remembers everything. It remembers the people you've loved in lifetimes past, the truths you've spoken, and the ones you've silenced, the dreams you've chased across centuries, the fears you've inherited through the echo of karma. And now, those memories are stirring, not in your mind, but in your frequency. That's why you're drawn to certain places, to certain people, to certain heartbreaks that feel inexplicably familiar. That's why you feel like you've been dropped mid-chapter into a story you didn't write. It's not because your life is meaningless, it's because it's ancient. You've just forgotten the beginning. And now, something in you is waking up. It starts subtly. A restlessness, a craving, a quiet rebellion against the script you were given. And then it grows. Suddenly, the roles you were playing don't fit anymore. The conversations feel empty. The work feels hollow. You look in the mirror and see someone you no longer recognize, because your soul is trying to show you the version you were always meant to be. The remembering begins here, not with dramatic revelations, not with visions or flashing lights, but with presence, stillness, honesty, the willingness to sit with the discomfort of not knowing long enough to hear what's been whispering underneath your thoughts all along. This is where your power lives. Not in your title, not in your status, not in how perfectly you perform, but in your ability to feel, to sense, to listen to the voice beneath the voice, the one that doesn't flatter your ego, but calls you back to the truth. This is not fantasy. This is not fluff. This is the reality your soul has always known. And the moment you stop chasing answers outside yourself and start asking the deeper questions within, you unlock something ancient. You begin to tune into the field of memory that surrounds you, holds you, and remembers every lifetime you've ever lived. And from there, the real journey begins. So ask yourself, why am I here? What am I ready to remember? And who have I always been beneath the forgetting? Don't rush the answers. Just ask. Because the soul always responds to sincerity. And when it does, it doesn't speak in logic. It speaks in resonance, in chills, in tears, in sudden moments of knowing. And when you feel that, don't turn away. That's the moment you almost remembered. And this time, don't let it pass. This time, stay. This time, listen. This time, follow. Because the moment you do, the story begins to rewrite itself, not from scratch, but from remembrance. And what rises from that remembering is who you came here to be. There are places in the world that don't just hold history. They feel it. You walk into them, and something presses softly against your skin. A pressure, a presence. You look up at vaulted ceilings or stone archways, and something deep inside you stirs. Not your mind, something older, the part of you that remembers what your mind has forgotten. That's what it felt like in the long room of Trinity College Library. Sunlight filtering through ancient windows, dust suspended in golden air, and rows upon rows of books older than any living person. The hush was thick, sacred, and for a moment you felt watched, not in a threatening way, but as if the walls themselves were aware of you, as if they had been waiting for you to return. And maybe they had, because the truth is, there is a place that remembers you, not just your name or your childhood memories, but the whole of you, the lives before this one, the wisdom earned through heartbreak, the love stories that never found their endings, the questions you've carried through lifetimes. That place is real. It's not made of brick or marble or scrolls, but it holds more truth than any structure ever could. This place has been called many names: the Hall of Records, the Book of Life, the Preserved Tablet, the Mind Stream. But the name we speak most often now, at least in the language of soul seekers, is the Akashic Records. And despite how mystical it may sound, the records aren't fantasy. They're not locked away in a far-off realm or reserved for the spiritually elite. They are the memory field of your soul, a silent, sacred archive that never stopped whispering your name. Most people spend their entire lives looking outward for meaning. They chase knowledge in textbooks, experts, and philosophies. They pile on credentials. They seek answers from others, rarely realizing the most profound source of truth is encoded within them. Not metaphorically, literally. Imagine a field of consciousness that remembers everything your soul has ever experienced. Not just in this lifetime, but across all your lifetimes. Every thought, every emotion, every intention, every impact, known and unknown, not recorded like a diary, but stored vibrationally, like a frequency that never stopped vibrating. That's the Akashic field. It isn't a place you go to. It's a field you tune into. It exists all around you and within you. And while it's non-physical, its effects are undeniable. Every time you feel drawn to a place you've never been, every time you meet someone and feel as though you've known them forever, every time you make a choice based on a knowing that defies logic, that's the records brushing against your awareness. Your soul knows the way, because it never left. From the moment you entered this world, the records were already humming beneath your skin. They've been trying to get your attention, not with flashing signs or thunderous revelations, but with subtle cues, with déjà vu, with gut feelings, with that pull you've always felt towards something you can't name. But most of us have been trained to ignore that pull. We were taught to trust only what we can measure, only what can be proven. And so we learn to silence the quietest, truest voice inside us, the one that knows. Not because it was taught, but because it remembers. And yet, the memory persists. It lives in the way your body reacts before your brain catches up. It lives in your dreams, in your creative impulses, in the ache you feel when you hear a certain piece of music or read a line of poetry that seems to have been written just for you. These aren't coincidences. They are fragments, threads of your soul's larger story pulling at you, asking you to come home to yourself. The records are not a myth. They are the connective tissue between your past, present, and future selves. They are the spiritual architecture of your evolution. And when you begin to access them, consciously or not, you don't just learn more about who you've been. You start to remember who you are. This remembering doesn't come in bullet points or clear explanations. It comes in waves, in symbols, in sensation. That's because the Akashic field doesn't speak the language of intellect. It speaks the language of emotion, intuition, resonance. You don't read the records the way you read a book. You feel them. You align with them. They rise to meet you at the frequency you're willing to embody. And here's the beautiful irony. The more you chase them with your mind, the quieter they become. But the moment you surrender, when you allow stillness, creativity, emotion, and intention to take the lead, the records begin to reveal themselves. Some people experience them as vivid visions. Others hear guidance as a voice, a song, or a thought that arrives with startling clarity. Some feel them as emotion, rising in the chest or stirring the belly without cause. And many more have touched them without realizing it, through dreams, art, prayer, movement, or the sudden unexplainable pull to change everything. There is no one right way to access the records because they don't live in the method. They live in the alignment. They live in the sincerity of your questions. They live in the depth of your desire to know yourself. They live in the energy of your presence, not as something external, but as an inner opening, a frequency shift, a return. Because the truth is, You've already accessed the records. Every time you've trusted your intuition and it turned out to be right. Every time you made a choice that didn't make sense but felt inevitable. Every time you forgave someone without knowing why, only to discover later that you had met before, in some other time, some other form. The records live in those moments, and yet most people dismiss them. They write them off as flukes, gut feelings, or emotional noise. But those glimpses are not accidents. They are invitations. Invitations to turn inward, to listen more closely, to trust the part of you that doesn't need proof because it carries memory, soul memory. And when you follow that thread, something begins to happen. You start to see your life differently. Patterns that once felt like bad luck begin to reveal themselves as lessons. Struggles become initiations. Emotions that used to overwhelm you now feel like messengers. The world doesn't change, but your perception does. You begin to walk with awareness. You speak with intention. You listen not just with your ears, but with your heart. You stop asking for signs and start realizing you are the sign. You stop asking, "What am I missing?" and start asking, "What am I remembering?" Because that's what this path is. Not a hunt for hidden knowledge, not a race to uncover past lives, but a deep, soul-level remembering of the truth that has always lived inside you. The Akashic Records are not a belief system. They are not reserved for mystics or seers. They are not fantasy or escapism. They are the most honest mirror you will ever face, because they show you the story behind the story, the soul beneath the self, the blueprint that existed before your name and will exist long after it. They show you your evolution, not as punishment, but as promise. They show you your potential, not as ambition, but as remembrance. They show you your path, not as prophecy, but as pattern. And once you see that, really see it, everything changes. Because you realize you're not broken, you're not lost, you're not too late or too far gone. You are exactly where your soul needs to be. And the records have never forgotten you. They've been here all along, waiting for the moment you would remember, waiting for you to slow down long enough to feel, waiting for you to stop performing and start being. And now you're beginning to listen. That's all it takes. That's where it begins. Not in temples or rituals, but in presence, in softness, in the sacred act of asking, what is trying to rise in me now? Because once you ask, the field responds, not with loud proclamations, but with resonance, with emotion, with memory that moves through you like music, unspoken, undeniable, familiar. You don't need to explain it. You only need to feel it. Because this place, this silent archive, this invisible library, it's not a fantasy. It's the soul's truest memory. And it has never forgotten you. There's a certain ache that comes when you start to notice the repetition in your life, the kind that creeps in late at night or settles in your chest after the end of yet another relationship that felt oddly familiar, even in its unraveling. The same arguments, the same triggers, the same endings, just with different names and faces. And it's not just in love. It's in the jobs you keep leaving, the dreams you keep shelving, the inner voice you keep silencing, even though you promised you wouldn't this time. It's like watching your own story from the outside, powerless to stop it from playing out exactly the way it always has. But what if that's not a flaw in your character or some cosmic punishment? What if that loop is not a trap, but a teacher? We are taught to believe that life moves in a straight line, that time is forward only, that progress is linear, and that healing happens once and for all. But your soul doesn't operate in straight lines. It moves in spirals. It circles back, not to punish you, but to give you another chance to see, to choose differently, to break open what was never healed the first time. Karma has long been misunderstood. It's not some celestial scoreboard keeping tally of right and wrong. It's not punishment. It's not vengeance. It's energy, unresolved, unfinished, unbalanced. It's the momentum your soul carries forward, lifetime after lifetime, asking for resolution, not retribution. Think of it like this. Every time you've turned away from truth, every time you've silenced your voice, every time you've betrayed your knowing, those echoes don't disappear. They store themselves within you, waiting patiently, lovingly, for a moment when you're ready to come back and finish the lesson. That's why some patterns feel older than this life. That fear that doesn't make sense, that wound that never fully closes, that self-doubt you can't trace to any one moment. It's because it didn't start here. It came with you, and it's here again, not to haunt you, but to free you. The same goes for the people who cross your path and change everything. Soul contracts are the silent agreements we make before we arrive here. Not to lock ourselves into a destiny, but to anchor ourselves to certain lessons, certain mirrors, certain activations. These contracts aren't always pleasant. Some are profoundly painful, but they are sacred because they draw to us the exact energies we need to evolve. That difficult partner who cracked open your heart, that friend who betrayed you at the exact moment you were ready to reclaim your voice, that family member who never understood you and forced you to become your own home. These are not accidents. They are assignments, invitations to remember your power by choosing how to respond. No one can trigger you like a soul who's agreed to hold up a mirror. And sometimes, what they reflect isn't what you want to see. But it's what you need to see. Not because you're broken, but because there's a version of you waiting to emerge. And it can't until you stop blaming the mirror and start looking at what it's showing you. This isn't easy work. It's the deepest work there is, because it requires radical honesty, radical compassion, and the courage to take back the pen from the parts of you that have been writing your story in autopilot. And still, this is where your liberation begins. The moment you recognize the pattern is the moment you regain your power, not to force a change through shame or control, but to choose, to pause, to feel, to respond from awareness instead of reaction. That's where the spiral opens. That's when the loop becomes a portal. Sometimes, what breaks the pattern is something as small as choosing silence instead of defensiveness. Saying no when you would have said yes, out of fear. Telling the truth when lying would have kept the peace. Walking away, not to escape, but to honor yourself. Staying, not from guilt, but from clarity. Each new choice is a crack in the armor of your old programming. Each moment of presence sends a signal to the Akashic field. I'm awake now. I remember. And the field responds. Mount Shasta has long been held as one of Earth's energetic power points, a place where many say the veil is thinner, the remembering stronger. But the real magic of a place like that isn't just in the mountain. It's in you, when you're finally still enough to feel what's rising beneath the surface. You don't need to stand beneath a sacred peak to feel it, though. Your soul's curriculum lives in every moment of your ordinary life, in the tension with your partner, in the choice to numb out or breathe through it, in the decision to abandon yourself or return. The soul doesn't care whether your breakthrough happens in a cave or a cubicle. It cares about frequency, about presence, about whether you're paying attention. And maybe that's the real miracle. Not that you're here to be fixed, but that you're here to remember how whole you already are. Even your patterns, your karma, your contracts, none of them exist to shame you. They exist to awaken you. They're the curriculum your soul wrote with exquisite precision. The question isn't, why does this keep happening to me? It's what part of me is ready to grow through this. And when you see it that way, something softens. The blame quiets. The shame dissolves. You begin to see the loop, not as evidence of your failure, but as proof of your evolution. Because the pattern brought you here, aware, reflective, seeking. That's not failure. That's arrival. If you're willing, take a moment. Think of a pattern in your life that keeps showing up, whether in love, career, self-worth, or fear. Close your eyes. Ask your soul, when was the first time I felt this? Let the answer rise without forcing it. It might be a memory from childhood, or it might be an image you can't explain. Another time, another place, another version of you. Trust what comes, then breathe into it. Not to change it, but to witness it. Awareness breaks the cycle. Not because it fixes everything, but because it finally allows you to see what you've been too close to for too long. And from there, you choose. Maybe not a perfect new path, but even a half step in a new direction changes the entire timeline. Your soul didn't come here to be stuck. It came here to evolve. And evolution doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like spiraling, but spirals rise. And so do you. You are not at the mercy of your past. You are not doomed to repeat what hurt you. You are the pattern breaker, the contract rewriter, the one who chose to wake up mid-story and ask, what else is possible? And the records answer, everything. Because every time you choose presence over pattern, love over fear, truth over comfort, you change your soul's frequency. And that changes everything, not just for you, but for those who came before you and those who will come after. You don't need to get it all right. You just need to stay awake, to choose again, to meet each moment with the awareness that you are not stuck, you are becoming. And that is more powerful than any loop you've ever lived. There's a voice that lives beneath all the others. You've heard it before, quiet, steady, older than words. It doesn't compete with the noise. It doesn't explain itself. It waits, patient as light, speaking only when the static dies down enough for you to finally hear. It doesn't beg for your attention, but it never truly leaves you. This voice isn't your inner critic or your logic or the noise of the world repeating itself in your head. This voice is your soul. And it's been trying to get through for a long, long time. Maybe you've noticed it at the edges of ordinary life, when the house is quiet and the dishes are done, when you're walking without your phone, without an agenda, when you're staring at the ceiling in the dark and there's a feeling that presses into your chest, like something wants to rise, something half-remembered but full of truth. It's not imagination. It's not emotion without cause. It's not you overthinking. It's you remembering. And the Akashic field, the soul's archive, is not something you access like a website or unlock with a code. It's not hidden in temples or reserved for monks. It doesn't arrive on command or respond to ritual unless that ritual is laced with sincerity. The records live within you, not beside you, not outside of you, within. That's why they don't come to those who demand. They come to those who soften. If you want to hear your soul speak, you don't need to climb higher. you need to sink deeper into your breath, into your body, into presence, because the field doesn't meet you in your performance. It meets you in your honesty. There's a reason the most profound insights often come not during hustle, but in the middle of stillness, in the car ride where no music is playing, in the shower, in the forest, in a moment when something in you has surrendered the need to prove or plan. That's when the veil thins. That's when the whisper begins to take form. You might expect that whisper to come with certainty, with answers, but it rarely does. Instead, it often arrives as feeling, a tug in the gut, a tear you didn't expect, a sense that this moment matters more than your mind can explain. The soul doesn't speak in the language of facts. It speaks in frequency. You don't translate it so much as you attune to it. It happens in art. When you're painting something that no one will ever see, and your hands move in a way that bypasses thought. When you're writing, and the words come faster than your mind can catch them. When you sing without performing. When you dance without choreography. When your expression becomes a portal, and something inside you opens without asking permission. This is how your soul remembers itself. That's why creativity is sacred, not because it's productive, but because it connects, not just to emotion, but to memory. Because when you let yourself create without judgment, you bypass the gatekeepers of logic. You let the records rise. You don't need to know how it works. You only need to let it happen. And for those who feel they aren't creative, know this. Creativity isn't a talent. It's a language. It's a bridge between the seen and the unseen, between the self you think you are and the soul that's always been waiting to come through. Stillness is another doorway, but not the kind of stillness where you're just not moving, the kind where you're present, where you're not reaching forward or rushing back, where the now becomes enough. It's deceptively simple. Sit, breathe, let the thoughts come, let them go. Don't force quiet, invite it. Over time, you'll start to feel the difference between silence and stillness. Silence is the absence of sound. Stillness is the presence of awareness. And in that stillness, you may feel an emotion rise, or an image, a memory, a question you didn't know you needed to ask, a truth that lands not with fanfare, but with peace. And you'll know it's the voice beneath the voice, because it won't speak to your ego. It will speak to your essence. Sometimes the records speak through dreams. That's when the mind is quiet enough to let the soul play. Have you ever woken up and felt like your dream taught you something that your waking self couldn't? Or cried from a scene that made no sense but left an imprint you couldn't shake? Your soul travels while your body rests, and it brings back fragments, images, messages, symbols. Keep a notebook near your bed. Ask before sleep, what do I need to remember? Then record what rises. Even if it doesn't make sense, record it. Over time, patterns emerge. Meaning follows, always. And sometimes, the records speak not in symbols, but in sensation. You walk into a room and feel heavy without reason. You meet someone and feel like you've known them forever, or like you owe them something you can't explain. You visit a place for the first time, and tears rise before you even speak. This is the field responding to you. Memory doesn't always look like scenes from a movie. Sometimes it's visceral. It's your body remembering, your energy reacting, your soul recognizing something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. And this is why accessing the records isn't a performance. It's not about control. It's not about mastery. It's about presence. So how do you begin? With sincerity. Sit with a question, not to demand an answer, but to open a conversation. Not what should I do, but what is trying to be remembered. Not how do I fix this, but what truth am I not yet seeing? Let the question sit in the room with you. Let it linger through your day. Let it echo. The answer may come not in meditation, but through a song lyric, a stranger's words, a line in a book that jumps off the page. The field uses everything, because everything is connected. There are no coincidences when you're listening. Even the moments that break you open are often messengers. Grief, loss, confusion. They clear space. They soften you. And in that softening, something wiser rises. Something older. Something unmistakably true. You may be afraid of what you'll find when you remember. That's okay. Many are. The records don't always show us what we want to see. They show us what we need to integrate. But they never show us more than we're ready to hold. And what they reveal is never for shame. It's for healing. You don't access the records to escape life. You access them to live it more fully, more awake, more aligned, more you. And here's what most forget. You don't need special words. You don't need to leave your life behind. You don't need to be anyone other than who you are, right now, right here, asking honest questions and listening with your whole self. That's enough. That's the doorway. And on the other side of that doorway is the voice that's been whispering all along, waiting patiently for you to turn inward and say, I'm ready now. I'm listening. And the voice will answer, not with noise, but with knowing, because it never stopped speaking. And now, finally, you're still enough to hear. There comes a moment in every awakening where the remembering begins to shift. It no longer feels like something you visit in quiet meditations or access in fleeting dreams. It becomes a presence that moves with you through your conversations, your choices, your pauses. It weaves itself into the ordinary, not as something mystical and out of reach, but as a quiet, knowing humming just beneath the surface of everything. You begin to realize that what once felt like a revelation is now part of your rhythm. You no longer look for signs with desperation, because you've started to become the sign. And that voice, the one beneath the noise, the one you spent so long learning to hear, now feels like your own, because it always was. What happens next isn't a return to who you were before the remembering began. It's not a performance of spiritual knowing or a checklist of awakened behaviors. It's integration. It's the sacred, slow alchemy of allowing what you now know to become how you live. It's choosing to walk with your soul, not just in the quiet, but in the noise. Not just in ritual, but in routine. Not just when it's easy, but when it would be so much simpler to forget again. You realize that remembering your soul's blueprint was never the destination. It was the threshold. Now the question is, what will you do with what you've remembered? There's an illusion many of us carry, that purpose is something we must find, chase, invent, that it waits like a hidden treasure at the end of some perfectly aligned path. But the Akashic field tells a different story. It doesn't ask you to create your purpose from nothing. It asks you to uncover it, like an archaeologist brushing away layers of dust until the shape of something ancient and essential begins to emerge. Because your purpose isn't new. It's ancient. It's been with you through lifetimes. It pulses through your interests, your struggles, your sensitivities. It's not something you have to force. It's something you remember into being. And when you live from that place, when you begin to write your life from the inside out instead of the outside in, everything starts to shift. You may not change the world in the way you once imagined, but you'll change your frequency. And that, in turn, will change your relationships, your work, your presence. You'll stop showing up to be validated. You'll stop performing for belonging. You'll begin to move with a quiet confidence that doesn't need to be explained because it's felt. People will notice. They may not have the language for it, but they'll feel something different in you. You'll speak less from habit and more from truth. You'll pause more often. You'll listen more deeply. And without realizing it, you'll become a mirror for others. Not of perfection, but of permission. Permission to be real, to be honest, to be fully human and still deeply connected to something more. This is the spiral of awakening. Not a single moment of enlightenment, but a return. Again and again, in deeper and wider circles, to the same truth. You are not here to be told who you are. You are here to remember, and then to create from that remembrance. And in this spiral, authorship becomes sacred. You stop asking, what should I do? You start asking, what feels aligned with who I'm becoming? You stop looking for the next spiritual high. You start building a life that reflects your soul's frequency. You write your story not by force, but by resonance, by choosing relationships that reflect your truth, not your trauma, by creating work that feels like an extension of your essence, not a performance for approval, by walking away from anything that costs you your peace, no matter how long you've stayed. You begin to live like someone who remembers they are not the role they've been playing. You are the storyteller, the architect, the witness, the soul in motion. And what you write from this place is not just for you. It ripples. When you begin to align your life with your inner knowing, you permit others to do the same. You become a signal in the noise, a lighthouse, not because you're trying to guide anyone else, but because you've finally stopped dimming your light. You start to notice how much you've outgrown, the stories you were handed, the narratives of shame, fear, scarcity, smallness. You see how many of them were never really yours, and slowly you begin to set them down, not with resentment, but with reverence. Because now you're ready to write your own. It won't be perfect. It doesn't need to be. The soul doesn't speak in flawless sentences. It speaks in feeling, in courage, in the willingness to show up messy and honest and whole. You'll still face fear, but now you'll recognize it not as a stop sign, but as a threshold, a place where the next chapter begins. You'll meet challenges not with avoidance, but with curiosity. What is this here to teach me? What part of me is being invited to expand? This is how you move from remembering into authorship. You stop waiting for clarity to descend. You start living as if you already know, and in doing so, the knowing deepens. You become the proof. You become the prayer. And over time, your life becomes the most sacred offering you could make. Not because it's loud, not because it's impressive, but because it's yours, fully, authentically, soulfully. A life that whispers to the world. This is what it looks like to walk in truth. That is legacy. Not what you build, but how you become. Not what you leave behind, but what you embody now. You are not a footnote in someone else's story. You are the pen, the page, the voice that has waited lifetimes to be heard. So what will you write next? Maybe it begins with a choice to trust yourself more, to pause before reacting, to speak the truth even if it trembles, to create without knowing the outcome, to say yes to what excites your soul, to say no to what no longer fits. Maybe it begins with a question you are willing to sit with night after night until it leads you somewhere unexpected. Maybe it begins with remembering again that you never needed permission to begin, because you're not just remembering who you've been, you're remembering who you came here to be. And now, you begin to live like it. Not someday. Now.